Hello, this is Sean Brady of San Diego High School, and I'm with the Director of Corporate Publishing, Mrs. Irvine.
Hello.
So we'll start with the first question. Why was the zoo founded?
Well, let me tell you a story about the founding of the zoo, and it all started with the Panama Canal, which opened in August of 1914. And at the time, it was one of the greatest engineering feats in the world to be accomplished. And of course, we know that it connected the Atlantic and the Pacific Oceans. San Diego is the first port of call in the United States. So to put this sleepy little town of 40,000 people on the map, San Diego decided to have a World's Fair celebrating the opening of the Panama Canal. So it was the Panama California World Exposition. Part of the exposition included animal exhibits throughout Balboa Park, which was the site of the World's Fair. And there were some caged animals along Park Boulevard. And at the end of the exposition, nobody knew what to do with these animals. Where do we send them? What's going to happen to them? So there was a local physician named Dr. Harry Wegeforth who had grown up loving animals his entire life. And in the fall of 1916, he was driving down down Laurel, and he heard the roar of a lion. And the roar inspired him to say to his brother, wouldn't it be splendid if San Diego had a zoo? I think I'll start one. And with that, the Zoological Society of San Diego was founded on October 2nd, 1916, and the San Diego Zoo was born. And in the beginning, everybody in San Diego thought Dr. Harry was a nutcase. They thought, why would you ever think this tiny little town could ever support a zoo? But he was very, very determined. And he really believed in the zoo. And by the early 1920s, what had become a source of amusement and jokes among the people of San Diego became a source of pride for the city. And at that early age, the San Diego Zoo had already started on its way to becoming one of the world's greatest zoos.
Thank you. I know you beautifully touched on the Panama Canal in the first question, but can you please explain that in a little more depth?
Yes, the San Diego Zoo was founded after a World's Fair celebrating the opening of the Panama Canal. And the city of San Diego wanted to put itself on the map, and they thought that it would help economically if they celebrated the Panama Canal. So they created this World's Fair. And at the end of the World's Fair, there were animals left over in need of a home, and a local physician heard a lion roar, and that inspired him to found the San Diego Zoo. And the first animals in the zoo were those animals left over from the Panama California Exposition.
Okay, we're going to move into the third question. What was the zoo's original mission?
Even from the beginning, Dr. Harry wanted a world-class zoo that would show people of San Diego the importance of animals and the uniqueness of animals. So even then, the idea was there was some conservation in mind, but a lot of it was education and something that would, there weren't exotic animals like that. They didn't have gorillas, they didn't have koalas. And so Dr. Harry really felt that it would enhance the lives of the people in San Diego. And he felt that by people knowing about animals in the long term, it would also help them support conservation issues, down the road.
Alrighty, so number 4 asks, has the zoo's mission changed?
The zoo's mission has changed. When I started, our mission was recreation, education, and conservation. And we were really trying to connect people with wildlife. We were trying to teach them about wildlife. And that was really important. Again, from the very beginning, we wanted people to understand wildlife. But just in the last 5 years, we changed our mission, and it's because of the changing status of animals in the world, to leading the fight against extinction. So we've always had conservation as a part of what we're trying to do, but now it's at the forefront. And our rallying cry is to end extinction. So everything we do now is all geared toward fighting extinction of our precious wildlife around the world.
And you talked about extinction. I heard that you had a white rhinoceros here.
Yes.
And he was euthanized, is that?
Okay, so you're probably talking about NOLA.
Yes.
Rhinos are one of the most critically endangered species on Earth because poachers are killing at least 3 a day. And one of the species that made a comeback, partially because of San Diego Zoo and Safari Park, was the southern white rhino. But there's another species of white rhino from northern Africa that has been obliterated in the wild. And now there are only 3 northern white rhinos alive in the world. But until a couple years ago, we also had 3 northern white rhinos, very, very elderly animals. And a couple years ago, we lost our beloved Nola.
Yeah.
And she was euthanized. It was a humane decision because she was so sick. You know, it was just kind of like with your pet, you have to make those challenging decisions. But we're not letting Nola's death stop us. We now have a program, it'll take us years, but we are working to harvest and create embryos from cells of northern white rhinos and eventually implant them in southern white rhino surrogate mothers. And we want to bring that species back from the brink of extinction. And people say, why save a species where there are only 3 left and pretty soon the other elderly ones are going to die? And it's because we have that technology to do so.
Yeah.
And in doing that, we will also learn what we can do to help other species. So we feel, why not? You know, it's important to our mission. And if we can do it, we're not going to give up. We're going to try. And I know that we will succeed. It may not be for 10 or 15 years from now, but we will succeed in bringing that rhino back from extinction. And it's not just one birth. I mean, you have to have multiple births and eventually build up, you know, a herd of rhinos. So it's going to take time, but I know with our expertise, we can absolutely do it.
And I totally agree, because, you know, preserving the future red rhinos for future generations.
Yes.
Right.
We owe it to future generations to do everything we can to save the species on this planet.
Right. Thank you for that. Question number 5 asks, what importance did the zoo have to San Diego and internationally when it was opened?
Well, at first, the local people thought the zoo was a joke. But when our founder started bringing in more and more animal species, including koalas for the first time ever outside of Australia, the community realized what a treasure the zoo is, and it started to draw people from around the world to visit the zoo. So we really increased tourism and brought, you know, the San Diego Zoo, or we really brought San Diego City's name before the zoo. Let me start again. Sorry. Okay. Because the zoo became world famous, the city of San Diego also became world famous because of the zoo. And I think internationally, we gained respect from international zoos and organizations, and we became one of the leaders in the zoo world and the conservation movement. It took years, you know, it doesn't happen right away, but it took years.
Okay. And adding to number 5, I heard that this is one of the few zoos in the world that houses the panda.
For a long time, there were only pandas inside China.
Okay.
And then the government during the communist era, which it still is, were only giving giant pandas out as gifts of state. But in the mid 80s, we got pandas in San Diego for the first time, and pandas are in other zoos. However, we had the first panda cub born in the United States to survive. It was Hua Mei, and that was in 1999. And
Wow.
we partnered with China on panda conservation efforts. And because of our partnership, the most exciting thing is that panda population in China has grown, the number of reserves has grown, and giant pandas have been taken off the endangered species list. It's not that they're out of trouble, but our zoo, with our Chinese colleagues, really led the fight to save pandas, and they are on the road to recovery, and that's really good news.
It is. Alrighty, so let's move on to question number 6. Has the zoo's importance, locally or internationally, changed since its founding?
The zoo's importance has absolutely changed since its founding. I mean, we are 101 years old. We are in our 102nd year. And when you look at the history of our organization and how our impact on conservation efforts around the world, how our impact on education efforts, the international visitors come here. I mean, we are now, I don't like to say the premier, because every zoo has good things about them, but one of the most preeminent zoos in the entire world, and we really are leading the fight against extinction.
Alrighty, so number 7 asks, which historical events have impacted the zoo, positively or negatively?
A couple things are really kind of interesting. In World War II and in the Depression, you'd think that the zoo would have been impacted tremendously, and we were, but we had a female zoo director, Belle Benchley, the first female zoo director in the world, who actually not only ran the zoo but helped the zoo prosper. And she took advantage of a lot of the things like the WPA, food rationing and all, and she rallied support. So the zoo, believe it or not, you'd think it wouldn't, but the zoo actually prospered during those years.
Wow.
Years when things have been really bad have been more recently when the economy dipped. Like the recession was very challenging. That's the recession we had like in the mid-2000s. In the 1970s and 80s, the gas crisis hurt us tremendously because we depend on tourists, people to come and visit us. And when people can't get gas in their cars, especially back then, it really hurt our attendance, and it hurt businesses who couldn't afford to help support us, and donors and all. So when there's a recession economically, that is usually what really hurts us. But now things are on the upswing. In just 2017, we had our best fundraising year ever.
Really?
Yes.
All right, so moving on to question number 8. Was the San Diego Zoo considered groundbreaking when it was created?
We were considered groundbreaking because all zoos used to keep their animals in cages, and our founder went to Germany, which is really, they had groundbreaking zoos, and he saw the open-moated naturalistic enclosure idea. So you don't have it in a cage, you have a moat, so the animal can't jump over the moat and get out. And so at San Diego Zoo, we were the first zoo in the United States to use that open-moated enclosure concept, and that put us on, the map for zoos. And to this day, we continually strive to have the most naturalistic exhibits possible. And I'm not saying there aren't some cage areas that still need to be redone, but when you look at what's inside in the habitats and all, we are world renowned for that, especially when you look at our San Diego Zoo Safari Park.
Alrighty.
There's one other place.
Okay, go ahead.
In the mid-1920s, we were the first zoo to hire a veterinarian, and he really was interested in care of the animals and learning about doing necropsies, learning about what made them die, and so he was really preeminent in some of the medical challenges with animals, and us learning how to deal with those, and us really being able to treat our animals better than other veterinarians in the world.
Let's move on to question number 9. It asks, which significant figures in San Diego history have supported the zoo throughout affiliation, partnership, or financially?
Our first major donor was Ellen Browning Scripps in the 1920s and 30s, and